me to be seated on the dais in front of the elite fraternity. And in fact, I was telling Mohan Vamsi Garu that even as I walked in, I'm quite unnerved, not really knowing what to say. And even as I was called onto the dais, and after seeing the large gathering before the dais, there is an experience of mine that actually comes across very strongly today. And I think I did share it on quite a few occasions, but I think this is an occasion where I need to reiterate the experience that I had faced earlier on. This was probably in 2004 when I had first entered the parliament. And I was quite lost, quite worried, scared, not knowing how to make interventions in the parliament, not knowing how to raise questions, not knowing how to really make very fruitful and productive interventions, which is when I asked a colleague of mine, what do I do? And he was a senior gentleman. He looked at me, smiled and said, Purandeswari, you just don't have to get worried. This is the easiest thing that you can do in your life. All that you need to do when you want to make an intervention is raise your hand. And he says, your duty is to continue speaking, while it's the speaker's duty to keep ringing the bell, so just ignore it, don't bother. But what came later was very interesting. He said, you just have to continue speaking for whatever length of time you need, provided you don't say anything. So that is something that I'm probably still deciphering until date, as to how do I speak for a long number of hours but still say nothing. I think that is going to be more difficult than actually identifying a lesion, just as we saw on the screen today. But yes, it is a humbling moment, not simply because I'm standing in front of an elite medical fraternity, but also having a mother who succumbed to lymphoma, after having experienced a sister having detected with breast cancer, but God willing and God being kind, she was treated well and she's out of it. But having had the harrowing experience of losing an aunt to cancer, and now having a cousin almost on the verge of an end, I think this is really a humbling experience for me. And I think it's a real privilege for me to be here today, even as we launch the tomography, which is the most advanced in my knowledge in actually identifying breast cancers. And of course, we know for a fact that all through these years, the focus of public health had been on communicable diseases. There have been seminars, there have been conferences, there have been debates and deliberations on the disease burden of communicable diseases and how it actually affects a person besides the actual progress and growth of our own country. But I think today, time is right for us to shift our focus to the non-communicable diseases, like probably the heart diseases and the cancer, which is again not only comes forth as a serious issue with regards to the disease burden, but also something that actually affects quality life. And that is why we need to take a complete different look today and actually find ways and means of addressing the challenge that we have before us. Indian oncology is estimated to be anywhere around a $10 billion market, with an annual increase of around 21% every year. And despite all of this, despite the increase in incidences that are coming to the fore, despite many number of patients coming forward with a lot more awareness, dedicated oncology setups, or even probably equipped departments in hospitals are yet to actually reach the numbers that can actually cater to the large number of identifications that are happening today. And therefore, I think it is time for the industry, when I say industry, the manufacturers, probably the researchers, the medical fraternity, which means all the stakeholders, to come together and actually find ways and means of coming out with ways and means of reaching people actually being afflicted with breast cancers which are on the increase today. There have been studies which have emphasized that about 45% of the general cancer and about 55% of breast cancer mortalities are actually happening in low and even in the poor countries, in the low income and the poor countries. And that is where it becomes very, very important for us in India. More particularly, looking at the geographical challenge that we have in our country, with a large population living in the rural areas, how do you reach out to them? We need to look at innovative ways in actually reaching out to them. And today, that is where we strongly believe that the diagnostic or the diagnosis has, the Indian diagnostic sector has a very important role to play. Today, there is a paradigm shift in the medical practice, and the shift is from treatment after detection of the disease or the inability towards prevention through early detection and treatment. I think that should actually be the focus when it comes to breast cancer. And the Indian diagnosis market itself is set to be a $2.5 billion market, growing at a rate of around 20% annually. But is that sufficient to actually reach out to the people? There is increasing awareness, and there is affordability in the sense that there is more monies now in the hands of the people, and the awareness coupled with the monies in the hands of the general people or the common man is actually attracting them to the diagnosis. But however, we need to make it more affordable, more accessible, because we know that there have been surveys that have emphasized that there are two reasons why most of the people in rural India actually commit suicides. They said one, the first reason is unable to pay back the debt that the farmer or the farming community is making for agriculture is one, and the second one is unable to pay back the debt that a common man takes to afford good quality medical intervention. These are the two major reasons, is what surveys have emphasized, which are the actual reasons behind the rising incidences of suicides in rural India. So now the challenge before us is how do we actually make such wonderful technological advancements affordable and accessible to people. Now one intervention that was made, a very innovative intervention that was made by an ophthalmologist, was to have a nodal center in the district headquarters, and from there have little clinics in around 10 or 15 villages where screenings were actually done for any kind of eye diseases or eye problems that people were having. And after the screening being done in the 10 centers, then they would be brought to the district headquarters. And there they would be again looked into as to whether really serious interventions were needed. And if really serious interventions were needed there, then they would actually be brought to the tertiary hospital, which was in an urban center. Probably we need to look at innovative methodologies to see if we can actually screen even at the village level, and then see if really such kind of serious interventions are required when they can actually be brought to the tertiary hospitals in the urban centers. I think that would largely help the common man, the man who cannot afford traveling to the tertiary hospital every time he thinks he's in need of it, or she is in need of it, and try to bring the advancements in technology much, much closer to the common man living in the remotest areas of our country. I think that would be a huge help which the medical fraternity would actually be doing if we were to explore innovative methodologies like this to see if we can actually reach out to the common man living in far-flung areas in our country. Of course, technologies have advanced, The rapid evolutions are happening today, as we have just seen on the screen with the tomography, which was just explained to us. This again has been the intervention of probably private entrepreneurs who were pushing the envelope beyond probably just the screening mammography or the ultrasound technology, or even for that matter, even just the basic interventions that are being made when people are afflicted with diseases. But even as we talk of technological advancements, we've just seen how the tomography can actually reduce the number of recalls that can happen to a patient, how lesions that are overlapped by tissues can actually be identified with greater accuracy, and how unnecessary invasive interventions could be prevented in case there is not the real dire necessity to have an invasive intervention. These are all wonderful technologies that are evolving today, and we should thank the research that goes in behind it. We should thank the minds that are actually committing themselves to these technological interventions, but it is definitely the responsibility of the medical fraternity along with policymakers to ensure that these technological interventions are actually carried to the actual beneficiary, and that would be the person or the man, the common man living in far-flung areas in our country who is not able to afford such technological interventions. So I think that should be the focus today, besides the fact that we are actually making the advancements that are very, very important. Today, the focus should definitely and necessarily be how do we make these technologies available and accessible to every person in our country, and not just remain with a few who can just afford it. That should be the focus today. And I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate Dr. Mohan Vamsi Garu for having coming up, for probably having brought in this mission into the state of AP. And of course, I have, I cannot say a very long acquaintance with him, but yes, I have been acquainted with him for quite some time, even as he was acquainted with the Basavatarakam institution. And I'm sure his commitment would go a long way in helping, the common man who comes to him with a real appeal and a request for help. That is how I know Dr. Mohan Vamsi right from the beginning days, and I'm sure he'll carry on the good work. And I would also like to thank him for having given me the opportunity to be here with all of you this evening and to share my thoughts and my concerns as well. Thank you.